Oh, that was my fault actually.
Okay.
I forgot to hit the go live button.
Jimmy, no, come on,
It
man.
happens, man. I'm sorry for everyone out there.
So
Let
we
me see.
did
Y'all
only
missed the
20 minutes.
intro. You missed that. You missed that great speech I just gave. Um,
So they couldn't hear us or see us.
they couldn't see or hear anything.
Oh my gosh. All right, what do we do, bro?
I guess we start over.
All right, let's start over. No music.
No, we'll just go from here.
All right, that's fine.
So I want to apologize to everyone who's been tuned in and was not able to catch the stream. The producer and director of the show, myself, forgot to hit the go live button. I hit the
So
stream
slap
live.
him. Slap him. Do not
Yes,
slap
pop
me.
pop.
Slap him.
Yeah, there's a stream button I started, then you have to hit the go live button, and I forgot to hit the go live button. So I apologize. You guys just missed one of the greatest dialogues ever in the history of mankind in time. I feel bad that
And it took 10 minutes, folks. So you gotta be somewhere. It
yeah,
took too long.
you can't rush
That is the
greatness.
reason why you did not hit that button because they did not need a 10-minute epic novel.
I don't think it was 10 minutes, but
So,
it was great nonetheless. Uh,
all right, well, Jimmy, let's kind of reset our conversation today. So, again, if we're gonna reintroduce myself, my name is Tommy Duncan. Welcome to Black Men Speak, and I'd like to introduce my colleague.
I am J.R. Stewart, all knowing, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Sorry for the mishap. It was certainly my mistake. I think maybe I was in too much of a rush to do this show.
All
So
right.
when you have all this knowledge is just bursting out of you, you can get a little too excited sometimes. Anyway, I think the first question was what? Why is marriage important, or why should we get married?
Yeah,
And
we're talking
basically,
about relationships tonight, folks. And obviously, we're talking about, black love, black men and women, and marriage. And we're actually looking at that from a framework of what's going on in American culture today and what's happening. So we got some questions from the sisters. We got a few questions from the brothers. We're going to get through as many of those as we possibly can. If we cannot get through all of those tonight, in the interest of time,
we will
we may have to
have a second show next week.
We'll let that be on you.
Yes.
If you want to call in, take this number, 972 497 2280. Again, 972 497 2280. So
That
we're
is-
going to get straight to the questions.
Let's
and
go.
We're going to go from there. The first question that we have is marriage important in today's society? Why or why not? And we bring that under the context of, the divorce rate in America is the highest that it's probably ever been. And for what it's worth, when we look at our community in particular, a study was done a couple of years ago that over half of black women have never been married. And
We'll never be married.
it's tending to get worse. So we got to dig deep and look at some structural issues as to what's happening and figure out how we resolve. So first question, is marriage important today?
Yes.
Right now?
Two are better than one. They're plain and simple. I can't say it any simpler than that. So the two of you working together to raise a family, have children, to provide a quality of life for you and your offspring is the most important job and thing you can do. And the two people working together to make that happen is the most important thing. Trying to do it by yourself, you wasn't meant to do it by yourself. That's why it's so hard.
And the other thing we have to look at, Jimmy, if we look at that and we glamorize marriage because of what we see on the television and for what we see on the movies, starting with Gone in the Wind, all these great, romance movies and novels and things of that nature. But when it really gets down to it, I mean, marriage is a contract, and it's a marriage contract between two people, obviously, and God. But we look at the practical side of it, I will have to agree with you. One, you have two people bringing, from an African-centered perspective, two families together for the procreation of the next generation of not those two individuals, but of those two families. But the other thing, Jimmy, that we have to take very seriously, that we don't have a a lot of conversation about in our communities is that that actually helps develop and pass wealth from one generation to the other. If we look at it from a practical point of view, tax laws are built for, they benefit two groups the most: business owners and married people. And if you're a business owner and you're married, it benefits you even more.
Well, that is true, Tom, from a legal and tax perspective. And one of the biggest problems that people make today, especially young people, is they don't get their families involved. There was a time when if you were dating someone, you would have to go meet her family, she would have to go meet yours, and the family would sort of be engaged in a vetting process. And there were two ways that they would communicate, well, three things they would either say: that this person is good for you, this person is good to you, or this person is not for you. There was only three messages that you're going to get from the family. And if they were good for you, then that means you have a green light to move forward in trying to form a union. If they're good to you, that means this person is good to date, but probably not marriage material. And then if the person is just not good for you at all and shouldn't be in your life, your family told you. But now people sort of date, decide to get married, do not involve their family other than send the wedding invitations out. And then when things start to go south in the relationship, because the families are not invested in your union, they don't feel obligated to get involved in the problems. So because they're not invested, they're not trying to help you solve your issues. If I had better support from my family and my ex-wife's family when we were going through issues, we were young and naive. They were older and wiser. They should have been able to direct us on how to get through our issues. I'd probably still be married to her if that was the case, but I don't regret how things unfolded. I'm happy with my current wife, and I hope she's happy with me. So,
gotcha. Now, the other thing we have to take into perspective, Jimmy, especially, when we look at what's going on in America today. A few years ago, I think it was 2016, I think that practically only a third, well, actually a little bit less than a third, only about 30% of African Americans were married as a whole. This was 2016 compared to about half of all Americans. And only about half of African Americans have never been married compared to 33% of all Americans. Now, this is not a 20th century conversation. This is a 21st century conversation. I've seen some studies that showed that, up until the 60s and or going into the 70s, that black men and black women were more likely to be married than were white men and white women. But there were some things going on in the U.S. politically and structurally that had an impact on that. But at the end of the day, when we talk about economics and broke and love, at the end of the day, if you are getting married and divorced and married and divorced, you are taking away a significant part of their wealth accumulation in your family. That's number one. And number two, and if you don't get married, I'm not saying that you're struggling, even though we have to consider where we are today in the country with, the economy and COVID, etc. But it's going to be very difficult to compete with other communities when your community is in very last in terms of marriage and therefore wealth accumulation and therefore productivity. I would agree with you. Two is better than one. We've got to figure out how to get back on that bandwagon.
well, I'll say this, Tom. I'm not going to go into I'll save it for another discussion, the political aspect of how the black family was destroyed. It was not by accident, it was on purpose. If you get a chance, go read the Supreme Court case of Alabama versus King and read through the notes there and see some of the things that were taking place in the 60s that led to the destruction of the black family that was so successful in America up until the 60s. The other part of that, is that
up until the 60s.
Yes.
Up until the 60s.
About 80-90% of black kids were in a home.
Had higher rates of marriage than white people up until the 60s and going into the 70s.
And our kids were raised in a household with a mother and a father. And they may not have been married, but at least they were there. And at a very high rate. and that has all changed now. Very few, minority of black kids now are raised in a household with a mother and a father. With that being said, people, despite what was done to us, we still have to come together and realize we have to work together. Part of that, Tom, is that we cannot, and I'll say this with kindness and respect, because it means no disrespect for white people, but we cannot follow in their footsteps and expect things to work out for us. Black women, give up the feminist movement altogether, wholeheartedly. You are not going to be a good wife following those rules and those pillars of and their views of marriage and the way they view men, and somehow have a successful marriage.
If the feminist movement worked for white women, why wouldn't it work for black women?
Because white women can tell you how marriage is slavery and go home to a husband and kids. Black women who buy into marriage as slavery walk around with the attitude that I don't need a man. See, the difference is that they talk it, we walk it. And that's why it's so detrimental for us, because it's more than just a slogan for us. Our women actually believe it, that somehow the black man is our enemy. And I'll be the first to acknowledge that black men have not always been there. They were chased out of the home in the 60s. They hadn't really come back. And they have left the black woman to raise a lot of babies by herself. And that's wrong. We should own that. We have to fix that. But with that being said, black women.
So Jimmy,
yes.
Pause on that. You said the 60s. You said the 60s. What is important about the 60s? Because when most of us think of the 60s, we think of civil rights.
The war on poverty, Tom, and like I said, the other thing is read the case of Alabama versus King and read how intrusive the welfare system was to black families, not necessarily to white families. They had the right to go into, if you receive benefits, the state could send a social worker to your house. You had to open the door. You could not refuse them. They could inspect your house anytime they wanted to, looking for a man. They didn't do this primarily for white women who received benefits, but they certainly did it for black women. They chased the man right out of that household. In addition to that, if the state found out that you were sleeping with a woman who was receiving benefits, they would come after the man to make him pay child support, even though those are not his kids. What man's going to want to date you if you have kids and you're on public assistance, knowing that that could lead to the state coming after him? So, like I said, read the case. It goes into a lot of details about the things that were going on, not just in Alabama, but across America. And that led to...
Let's fast forward a couple of generations,
of
decades. Because
once the black man was chased out of the household, Tommy never came back for the most part. And then on top of that, we don't teach our young men to be responsible.
One of my, mentors, used to say that, when I was growing up, I was a young man. He said when I was growing up, you used to have hard-working men and pretty women, and now you got
pretty men and hard-working women.
And so that leads me into the next question. The next question for one of the sisters is, why are men non-committal? Why don't black men get married?
Okay, so part of that, Tom, is that you have to have a reason. So for the most part, if you look at what's going on with the metrosexual movement, putting very weak, passive men on television and make them the goal, especially for black men. You have people like Melvin over in CNN or Don Lemon over in CNN. These are not the strongest black men that you can find. Charles Blow and all the rest of them. This is done on purpose to weaken the black men overall, to keep him from stepping up and being a leader in the household. So, if black men are not getting married at the rate that they once were, it's because they're not incentivized to do so. When you have to go home and fight with your woman over who's the leader in the household, when she wants to urinate standing up just like you do, show that she has a bigger penis than you do, then that's a problem. Because most men who are straight don't want to be with a masculine woman. Women need to understand this, that men are attracted to very feminine women.
But Jimmy, let's look at this. So if we're talking about weak, soft men, how did they get that way? And if we're talking about masculine women, how did they get that way?
Tom, because the message out there is that even though the Bible says you should not covet, but look at the movement has been for women to covet things that in their arena of men, and then vice versa. You know, men wear earrings now. They're carrying around purses. Cam Newton, some of the outfits he wear, I can't tell if he's a man or a woman sometimes. You know, and he's a sports figure hero. So, you know, when you look at the conversion process that's taking place in society to make men look more like women, and the expectation for women to step up and be strong, and this "I don't need a man" attitude, you know, is wrecking and wreaking havoc on black families. This is
how did that? But Jimmy, if we and again, let's pause there because we start talking about the war on poverty, and then we overlap that with women's lib. I get that. And so, what is the difference again with white women who, for what it's worth, have benefited probably more from the civil rights era than all the black community combined?
Yes, they have.
If you're talking about the feminist movement, which opened doors for women, how is it that they somehow got a different memo than black women, if that's what I think I'm hearing you say?
Well, because Tom, the social programming that takes place was never really intended to destroy the white family like it was intended to destroy the black family. So you have to understand, Tom, this is my belief that for the most part, our white liberal brothers and sisters are very afraid of the dynamic nature of black people. They will allow that dynamic nature to spread its wings and fly on the basketball court, on the football field, on the baseball field, but they don't really want that for Wall Street. They don't really want that for investment banking or any other aspect where they dominate right now. So they feel threatened. They respond by initiating things and policies to help destroy the black family that they feel most threatened by. The black man is the most threatening entity in America. So destroy him, destroy the family, jack up his kids, and you will guarantee your preservation. You will guarantee that he will not dominate you like he does on the basketball court. We allow him to dominate white men on the basketball court because we're entertained by it. We don't want him to dominate Wall Street and dominate white men who run Wall Street. That's the last thing they want. So to keep that from happening, the black family had to be destroyed. The black man had to be destroyed. Black children have to be destroyed.
But Jimmy, what's the real threat when black folks have never had real power in the United States in the over 400 years that we've been here?
Tom, they may not have real power, but you know what? It's not like others don't look at black people and understand how special we are. They look at us and say, wow, you know, you guys have a way of singing. You know, your music is very spiritual and soulful, the way you dance. We are unique people created by God. We are closer to God than anybody else on this planet. The Bible says that let us make man in our image. Well, we already know that the first people were black. So if the first people were black and Adam was black and he was made in the image of God, that means God is black. So
okay, so you're gonna have to carve that out, Jimmy, and we're gonna have another discussion on that one because that's a very deep and profound conversation that we're gonna have to get to, because when we start talking about psychology within our community, but what we worship practically every Sunday, we need to make sure we carve that out and make that.
Well, I'm just saying that, Tom, to say that other people look at us and they admire us. They admire the way we walk, our swag, our movements, the things how we transform language.
Are you saying that's why they copy it and monetize it?
Well, what I'm saying is they want to control it, where it's not a threat to them. They can be entertained by it. They can look at it and absorb it and mimic it. What they don't want is for you to ever realize your true potential and dominate them. So they don't get that.
Let's not get off track.
Okay.
Let's get to a couple more of these questions.
What's the next question?
Why are men non-committal? Why don't they want to get married?
Once again, Tom, you have to incentivize men to get married. If I got to come home and fight with my wife, now I'm going to say this that.
But Jimmy, why do men need an incentive to get married? Clarify that.
Because if there's
shouldn't they want to get married? Shouldn't they want to propagate the race? Shouldn't they want to be more productive, more economically sound?
Tom, the bottom line is that we migrate towards things that are pleasurable. We run away from things that are not pleasurable. That's just human nature. So if black men are running away from marriage, guess what? Marriage is not pleasurable because we have uncles, we have fathers, we have friends who have gotten married, and boy, it just seems like misery just kicks in right after that. That the black man sometimes is just beaten down and worn down, like all the life is sucked out of him. And who wants that?
Jimmy, how does that happen when you say married life is not pleasurable? Keep it clear.
What I'm saying, Tom, is that you talk to some of our married friends, and for the most part, if you talk to men when the women are not around, they tell you that they're not happy. That looking back on it, maybe it'd been better if they stayed single. And what that lets me know is that you've been chin checked and bow beaten down to submission. And you're no longer the leader in your household. You're not providing the type of security that the woman needs. You're allowing her to take your place as a leader in the household. So you may not be able to articulate exactly what's wrong, Tom, but you know something is wrong. Huh?
How does the woman or women put men in that position?
Because, Tom,
and they're supposed to be the leader of the household. How do women navigate and strategize themselves into that position?
Because, Tom, what man are you going to put if you're a woman, what man are you going to put your life in his hands and you don't think highly of him? If you think he's a fool and he's not as smart as you, he's not as intelligent as you, he's not as insightful or wise as you, why would you do that? Why would you, I love him, I like being around him, but he's not good with money. He can't manage the credit. He can't pay the bills on time. I look up and the lights are turned off or the water bill hasn't been paid. So for that reason, black women think they have to do it themselves.
Well, Jimmy, that would mean to me that that's a guy who's irresponsible, incapable of providing for a wife and or children, and probably shouldn't be married in the first place.
Well, Tom, that is true too. He hasn't been taught how to be responsible and how to lead. But on top of that, black women have just naturally have morphed into not trusting black men. And so it's hard to be a leader when you don't have the trust factor there. Black people don't trust.
How does that happen?
Black people don't trust other black people.
Into not trusting black men.
Well, because you look at the books out there, the movies, black men aren't portrayed very positively. They're portrayed as gangsters, and like what was Gabrielle Union said in Deliver Us from Evil, all a black man can do to you is ruin your credit and mess your weave up.
Jimmy, if we look at gangsters in the white community, let's say Alphonse Capone and some of these other guys who are gangsters, they're respected, they're revered. So what's the difference?
Well, because they're the type of gangsters, Tom, that lead, that have families, that go to church, that contribute to church and business and to line the pockets of politicians. Black gangsters are just known for shooting and killing. Not for spreading the wealth, buying the biggest car I can get, and many gold chains I can put on, and having bling and the B word. So there's a difference. So, but the point is that black men don't lead in their households. So it's easier to pair up with a non-black woman because she's already bought into the whole submission thing. We got a phone call coming in. Tom, let's see who this is. Okay, you on the Black Men Speak show. How can I help you? Hello?
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. What's your question?
Okay. Well, it's not a question. I wanted to make a comment regarding Tommy's question on how women put themselves in the position to be the distrustful of black men and in the lead position. So I just want to say that not necessarily due to any fault of their own, but back in the 60s when welfare kicked in and black women were put in the position to have to raise families by themselves, they developed all of those traits you're talking about that are so undesirable, basically out of survival. They had to, hustle and make things work. And since they didn't have a man, they had to do it on their own. And then, of course, the feminist movement comes and reinforces that crazy notion. And with all of that, so it's like a domino effect, black men became, as you pointed out, less responsible, less dependable, less in the leadership role. And how many black men have fathered babies and just, left them to be raised by the baby mama? So, yeah, that all plays into why oftentimes black women don't trust black men. They, as of late, kind of proven themselves not to be trustworthy for the most part. I'm not saying there aren't good ones out there. There certainly are good ones, great ones out there, but they're kind of few and far between.
Thank you, caller. So, Tom, did you get that? So, basically, the caller is attributing what's going on and the problems now to what happened during the 60s.
We're talking welfare and war on poverty.
Yes.
Which incentivized women to kick men out of the house
Okay.
so that they can get a government paycheck.
Thank you, caller.
Okay, Jimmy, are you there?
Yes. So,
Okay,
the
so-
caller, if you're still listening, since you're our first caller, we're going to give you a gift certificate to go out to a restaurant and get you a nice little meal once this whole virus thing blows over. So stick around. Make sure you send me or Tommy your contact information, and I'll make sure you get your gift card. So yes, back to the caller. So basically, she's saying that the 60s were the problem.
Well, I think it was one vector in a layer of policies that were directed differently towards the black community than towards the white community. Because
Definitely.
if you think about, for instance, the term welfare queens, we always, for some reason, the face of and the rhetoric on welfare queens, for some reason, were steered towards the black community, when by far and large, the white community sucked up lion's share of money from the government more so than the black community, but for whatever reason it was associated with the black community.
Well, Tom, that was done on purpose. We both know that.
You talk about white folk. But in addition to that, Jimmy, you have that which began to pull the black man out of the household or incentivize the black woman to not have a black man in the household. You fast forward another couple of decades, and then we have something that we call the anti-drug abuse bill. And that began to coalesce with being tough on drug abuse. And that was also, oddly enough, right around the time that crack cocaine began to penetrate the black communities. I found that interesting because I don't know of any black folks who had a strong enough distribution system, nor the infrastructure to supply drugs into the black community. And so you had the war on poverty, the war on drugs, which began to criminalize black men, or black men and women in our communities, which began to break up the family. And then all of a sudden, fast forward another decade, you have the anti-crime bill, which funneled billions of dollars for the building of jails and prisons across the country. And then, I don't want to get on it too long, but you see a series of political actions that literally turned the black family upside down.
Well, Tom, you have made my case. I'm going to point back to this video one day, and I'm going to say I told you so. But we're going to save it for another day because This
But
is
you have
not.
to understand, Jimmy.
It's not by accident, Tom.
This is a long line of political moves.
Yes,
by
it is a
both
very
sides-
long
both
line
sides
of political
Both
moves.
sides of the aisle.
No,
Jimmy.
not both
That's
sides of the
all I'm
aisle,
saying.
Tom. That's where you're wrong.
Both
So,
sides of the aisle, Jimmy.
not both sides of the aisle, Tom.
Okay, let's get back on track. We'll have
Get
a
back
political
on track.
later. We'll have a political conversation later. But let's
What
continue
is-
to
what's the
address
next question?
Okay, another question. Why do black men seem to prefer white women? Obviously, a question from the sisters.
okay,
Why do
so
black men seem to prefer white women?
because Tom, everything follows the path of least resistance. So if you are one of those strong soul sisters who's distrusting of black men who need to be in charge in order to feel safe, have your fingers on everything, constantly questioning him, going through his phone, scrutinizing every aspect of his life because you don't trust him. Guess what? Another woman, another color, who doesn't do those things, who's more trusting and more encouraging, seems like a better option for him when he compares the two. So no man wants to be around. I'm telling you, most black men cannot articulate this, so I'm going to have to speak for them. Most straight men do not want to be around a masculine woman. If you are too masculine, then the only way I can be with you is I have to be somewhat gay. You know, if you're too strong, you know, if you can't be the weaker vessel in my life, my helpmate, you can't put some trust in me. And on top of that, I mean, if you look at it from a biblical perspective, the Bible says for the wife to submit unto her husband all things. Not some things, not most things, all things. If you can't do that, for whatever reason, then you're no good to him. And at some point, he begins to feel that, but he doesn't know how to articulate or put his finger on it. He just knows something is wrong, and since society has made it easy for him to just walk out and abandon a wife, a family, kids, that's what he does. He follows the path of least resistance. He goes and finds a woman where he doesn't have to put up with as much from her, or the expectation is a lot lower.
Well, Jimmy, I will say this. For all of you who think that all of these men, black men, are married to black women, statistically speaking, 85% of black men are married to black women. Now, they're, by demographic designation, not the highest, but 85% of black men are married to black women, and that is just a fact. There are some women who think that half of black men are married to black women, but the issue is that those statistics have, over the last decade, grown. Black women, to their credit, are the least likely, I believe, of all groups, men and women of all races, to marry outside of their race. But we do have to acknowledge and understand and deal with the politics and the economics behind the fact that black women have the highest rate of not being married than any other group of women, white, Hispanic, Asian, black.
And Tom, let's put that in proper perspective so people don't think it's 85% of black. It's 85% of the 30% of black people who are married. 85% of those
Good point.
are what we're talking about here. Not 85% of all black people, period.
Correct.
Correct. So what's
For
the
those who are married.
of married?
A
Yes.
third of all black people are married, and of that third, when you divide up men and women, 85% of the men category are married to black women.
Correct. So what's the next question?
Next question. Let me see here. Okay. In no particular order. Why aren't black men there for their families and children? And that's an assumption. That is an assumption.
That is an assumption, Tom. And one is because I think we don't teach our black youth, boys who are transitioning into manhood, how to be responsible, not to be afraid of responsibility. And when I was growing up, I remember my grandmother telling me that there are three things that a man values: his money, his time, and his love, or his emotions, as she put it. And she said of the three, money is the least important. But in today's society, I speak to a lot of young guys, and they tell me, well, if I get married, she has to work, and because I'm not supporting her to stay at home, everything to them is about money. Money is more important than the wife. And of course, from the Bible tells you that a good woman is worth all the treasures in the world. But how many men are willing to trade all the treasures in the world for a good woman? He must have the treasures and go out and get all of the bling and all the women that comes with that. So, until we change our thinking and have young men understand what their purpose is, to be responsible, provide leadership, and to be good stewards of their families, that they have a responsibility to pass that on to the next generation. As long as they think it's just about them, and what's the thing today about pimping and big pimping? How many men now are looking for a woman to take care of them? Because women go out and work, and the only men that now is available to her are the lazy, trifling ones who don't want to work, rather send her out to work while they stay home or ride up and down the street in her car. I mean, this is a sad state of affairs, Tom.
Good point. And I know we talked about this earlier. Back in the old school, the brother said, look, when I was coming up, you had hard-working men and pretty women. Now you got hard-working women and pretty men.
That is true. And you have far too many women who are willing to take care of a man in order to have a man in her life. And that's sad. I mean, it really is.
And we have about 5 minutes until the top of the hour, Jim, so we're going to probably have to wrap up and kind of bring this one to a conclusion within the next 5 minutes, and then, figure out what our foray is to next week's session. So if we want to kind of summarize and bring some recommendations to bear in our relationship for both men and women, let's kind of talk to that for a few minutes, and then we can wrap up.
Okay, I'll go first, and I'll let you have the last word, Tom.
All right.
It's simple for me. Black men, you have to be leaders in your household. You have to be the Lord of your household. Black women, you have to learn to follow and put your trust in a man. And I know that's hard in today's times, but you have to do it. You have to find a way to work through this. And if we can't do that in large enough numbers, then we're doomed. So you don't want a man trapped in a marriage and simply have a man around who's not happy with you. Men can be happy in a marriage. They don't have to go outside their marriage. They can be happy in a marriage if you just learn to be a good wife and give them the time and space to learn how to be a good husband to you and to your children. Tom? I think we lost our video feed for...
All right, Jim.
Oh, there you are. We lost your feed for a second.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'll give you the last word.
Your segment?
Yes, I'll give you the last word.
All right. There are two things I'd like to recommend. For the men, first and foremost, it's a hard hurdle because 75%, if not more by now, of our households are being run by black women. That is a recipe for disaster in our community. It has not worked very well for us. And so we're going to have to come up with a different model. We have to have black men and strong black role models for our men, because there's something that a mentor of mine said is, a young man has to see a man in order to learn to be a man, but you have to have vision and you have to have goals. And you have to find someone who will support your vision, your goals, your dreams, and your passion. But you have to be going someplace in life, because if you're not going someplace in life with your life, it's going to be very difficult to find the right woman who's going to support you. And you have to act on that. For the women, most important thing, learn to listen. A good friend of mine, one of my very best friends, told me, and it was a she, if you will listen to your man, you can make him happy and you can get everything that you want if you're willing to listen. The problem is you must be willing to listen first. And number two, there is a reason where it says biblically that a woman has not power but influence. And so we've got to get out of fighting for power in the relationship and understand that it's influence that makes you powerful. You have to empower your man, and you have influence. And with that put together, you're unstoppable.
That is true, Tom. So people, please, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, to our channel, spread the word, and also hit the like button for our videos and the notification bell so when we upload new videos, if you don't catch us live, you'll be notified when the new videos are uploaded. We're here every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And please join us next week. Tom, we're going to come back. We're going to finish this because I know that people sent in a lot of questions, and I think we only got through 3 or 4. And I think I saw maybe 12 or 13 on the list. So
Yeah.
we need to come back next week, and I promise, guys, we won't make the same mistake as we did last time. Also,
Jimmy won't make the same mistake as he did.
okay, boy, that's a partner for you. Just leave me out there by myself. The other thing is, guys, normally the chat line shuts down at 9:45. We will open the line up at 9:05 next week. We'll leave it open till 10 o'clock for an extra 15 minutes because I anticipate the show going long next week. So with that being said, Tom, I think it's right at the top of the hour, so it's time for us to say goodbye.
All right, folks. Everyone have a good evening. We hope you enjoyed the show. We thank you for your contributions. We thank you for your questions. We thank you for supporting us. And more so than anything else, continue to fight the good fight.